Okay, welcome to another episode of Data in the Hallway. My name is Ray Paik of PingCAP, joined by my co-host, Daniel Van Eden, joining us as usual from the Netherlands. And today we're excited to have Ilan Rabinovitch joining us today, and excited to be able to talk about one of my favorite open source events in the world, called SCaLE. So we're also sponsoring a MySQL track at SCaLE. So gives me I mean, like I said, I always love going to the event, but gives us an extra motivation as we're obviously very interested in the success of the MySQL track. So Ilan, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Yeah. So Ilan, tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been working with the SCaLE event.
For sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, my name's Ilan, as you mentioned. I'm one of the SCaLE co-founders. We started it 22 years ago. Back when we were young college kids that had no idea what we were doing. We just thought we were just really into open source software and Linux, and we wanted to get our all of our favorite developers and projects and together. To teach us about cool new open source and Linux and other open platform related topics. So at the time, it was also a time of Linux and open source where really the only one of the only ways you could get started would be to find yourself a lug meeting, a Linux user group meeting. I guess these days it'd be something on meetup.com or something. And we, and get help getting, getting your X configuration issues resolved or whatever,
Right.
like weird nuance of your, you had some weird modem driver that didn't let you on the internet without, a bunch of like random, without having to write code as you were trying to get online. Like if you were a new user to Linux, this is not something you could figure out on your own. You have to go to a Linux user group meeting. So at that point, there was maybe, probably 15, 20 Linux user groups across LA. That's not to say they all had like 500 people at them or 200 people at them or even 10 people at them. They were varying sizes, but LA is a very broad and a very stretched out and disparate city. And so if you wanted to see all your Linux friends and open source friends, it actually meant that on a given week, you might have to go to like 4 different meetups or user group meetings. And so the other thing SCaLE served as a way of doing was to kind of give us a little bit of an annual reunion for the Southern California area of all of our open source friends. So we started that, like I said, in 2002 was the first year we held it at a university. I think we were, modest results. I think we had like 200 people show up, which was I think which for us is like I said, as probably 18, 19-year-old kids was an over the moon success. And it grew from there. So now 22 years later, it's probably somewhere in the 3,000, 4,000 person range. It's we went through a one-track event, mostly focusing on deep Linux topics, like from kernel developers to a multi-track event with 100 or some odd sessions about everything from the application layer to security to to the things like that, as well as like a large expo floor and lots of other sub conferences that run around SCaLE. So these days, instead of being in a small college campus conference room, we're at the Pasadena Convention Center, which is a large facility. And so we talked to other communities, other friends, like you mentioned the MySQL community. They said, well, we'd love to get all of our West Coast friends together. Can we can we have a room at SCaLE and put something together? Sure. The more the merrier. We love building a bigger community. The Nix community, if you're into whether it's NixOS or just the Nix way of doing things, they're running their North America conference the day before SCaLE at the same venue. Ubuntu's got their UbuCon event where they're bringing together their North America, North American developers and users together at SCaLE. So it's really become a bit of in addition, while SCaLE is a conference in of itself, it's also sort of become a sort of a wider festival in which a bunch of other communities attend and build their homes and and let us, get sort of that mingling and cross pollination of ideas across those communities, which is a ton of fun. And so yeah, that's it. It's an all volunteer community organized event. So if you're listening to this or watching this and want to come be part of the team, there are places where you could make a PR, and PRs are definitely accepted, but it's a conference, so a lot of things are also just come join the conversation and help us plan the content, help us promote, help us run the logistics of the event. I think the volunteer nature of it gives it a really fun energy that not that I think other events sometimes miss. So
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I really enjoy SCaLE is that, I mean, it definitely has an organic feel to it. I mean, you have like, sponsors, like people who pay for booth and all that, but it doesn't seem as corporate or salesy as some of the other conferences that you go to. And then, so I mean, like you mentioned, Elon, like, hallway tracks. I mean, for me it's what's most valuable, and that's where I get to meet a lot of my open source friends and sort of reconnect with people. So that's
yeah, I mean,
that's yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, we try to strike an interesting balance, like
Yeah.
a good balance between the open source party for all of your for your closest 4,000 friends,
Mhm.
and and the commercial conversations that happen at events. Like we do
Right.
have, our expo floor, does have sponsors. The way we pay for the event,
Right.
for the most part, is companies that want to reach the open source community to share about their products, their services. PingCAP, you want to, you
Mhm.
want to talk to the MySQL users and community about what you're doing.
Mhm.
And so, it is important that we strike that balance of like, actually, it's not just us to, for us all to get together and have a beer or a cocktail or a coffee or whatever it might be and
Mhm.
have a good time. It's also about getting work done. But I think you can have fun while you're getting work done.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's been that we've worked really hard to do that. Part of the way we keep that organic feel is to, just a lot, things like our expo floor. You're just as likely to run into a enthusiast developer that's like building a home media system, open source project, as you are to
Mhm.
run into, like SUSE or Google or Red Hat or Isovalent or one of these, large corporate entities or startups. And so by having all of those folks together,
Mhm.
it like it they're it keeps the sort of the feeling fun and casual while still having an opportunity to meet with good with folks that are doing real world corporate work with open source
Mhm.
software.
Right.
The other thing that we have is, I think a lot of conferences um, shy away from, I've been to a lot of conferences where there's a sign, where you have to be over this age to attend. Usually it's 18 or 19 or, sometimes
Mhm.
21 if it's in a city like Vegas and there's going to be alcohol involved. We encourage our attendees to bring their families.
Right.
And so we have a whole track that's dedicated to kids and, kids sharing what they're doing with tech and with open source. And,
Mhm.
back in the day, it was, you'd have a kid talking about what they're doing with how they're building some web application or what they're doing. Maybe a couple of years ago would have been what they were doing with crypto currencies. These days we're hearing about stuff that they're doing with AI and GPUs and ML workloads. We had a kid one year talk about how he used R to prove to his friends which of his favorite baseball players was the ultimate baseball player of all time, and they were wrong because he could prove it with math and code.
Wow.
And
Oh,
so
wow.
like this is sometimes sponsors show up and they say, why are there elementary school kids hanging out
Right.
hanging out on the expo floor? I was here to sell stuff.
Right.
But I think what they then realize is that elementary school there is there with their dad, and their dad's like the CIO of some large tech organization or CTO in the LA area that they would have never been able to get a meeting with because the dad was
Right.
busy hanging out with his kid at the at the park or whatever. But this weekend
Right.
he's brought his kid to the open source park,
Right.
and so they get to have those business meetings while also helping to sort of nurture and foster the next generation of open source developers. I had a really fun experience this year where I was walking down the floor of KubeCon in Chicago, and somebody taps me on the shoulder and says, "Do you remember me?" And I was like, I think so. I'm not sure. And he says, "Well, I've been coming to SCaLE since I was like 9." I was like, "You don't look 9 to me," because he's been coming for like 22 years. He's now the head of product for one of our sponsors, and he's running a booth on the Expo floor this year. And I was like,
wow.
Okay. So it's been it's been fun being part of this community, watching people grow both in their careers as well as as well in their abilities, and then coming back and continuing to give back to the community. So so it's a fun event. We do it as a sort of labor of love. And we did it because we wanted to have an event that taught us about the things where we could learn about the things we cared about. Turns out what we cared about has evolved over 22 years, and so the event has evolved with us. But we do our best to keep it very affordable. Usually tickets are under $100. They're not that's not how we pay for the show. Our generous sponsors like PingCAP and others are really how we make it happen. And so we hope you come out, come meet with the sponsors, come meet with the community, come learn in all the sessions we've got.
I mean, I was going to say, even sponsorship price point, like when you compare it to some of the other, like even open source communities, is quite affordable. Like even for a smaller company like us at PingCAP, like it wasn't going to break the bank, right? So that obviously makes participation a lot easier for companies like us. So yeah, we definitely appreciate that, and I can relate to some of the people that you meet, because LA metro area is huge, right? And there are a lot of companies there, and then the people you meet, like I'm in a booth. This may have been, when I was at GitLab, I was talking to somebody. I see somebody's badge. It's like a product lead at like the Disney Studios, right? And it's just like, I was just having a casual conversation about CI/CD or something, and then because I think the other thing is, like, what some people may not realize is that core part of the event, just like FOSDEM, happens over the weekend, like Saturday and Sunday. It's got a very relaxed like vibe, right? It's pretty casual, and then that also says something about the people that are at the event. Because I remember I was delivering a talk on Sunday at like 11 a.m. or something. And there are like 20, 30 people in the room listening to me talk, right? Which I was grateful for. But I was thinking, we're in Pasadena, or I think that particular talk I was giving, we're closer to LAX because we had to, you had to move the event because of Omicron. But, like from LAX, you can go to the beach in like 20 minutes, right? It's a nice day, nice sunny day in Southern California, but people are in a room listening to people like give a talk rather than hanging out at Venice Beach or something, right? So I mean, obviously people that are there want to be there for a reason, right? Whether to learn or to network with people. So I really like that aspect of it. People aren't like forced to be at the event because, like you said, the cost is like $85. I think is the regular price that you pay for. Is like you're not gonna cry over your beer because you spent $85 and not show up. Right? They're showing up for a reason. So
I mean, I think I think we started the event when we were kids. And so the only playtime we could do it was on the weekend, because when we were in school during the week. That's how it happened. And over the year, that's over the years that for the first couple of years, that was it. That's all we did. We just did Saturday and Sunday. In fact, I think some years it was only Saturday. And we built a really strong community of folks that cared about open source and about open platforms and about the stuff they were doing with tech deeply. They were taking time out of their personal lives to come do it, but also they, in many cases, they couldn't do it during the week. What we found was interesting was that there's sort of two classes of people in our community and our attendees, and there's not. I don't mean that in terms of better or worse, but just in terms of how they how they think about computers in their lives and where it's at. And there were some people that were saying to us, I will never be able to come on a weekday. I have a job, even though this is training for my job. There's like meetings from 9 to 9. I don't have time to do this. I cannot. But I really love the community. I really want to see my friends and and meet these companies and learn and all this other stuff. I'm going to come to SCaLE on Saturday or Sunday. There's another group of folks that say to us, computers are what I do for work. When I'm not working, I want to hang out with my kids. I want to hang out with my wife. I want to hang out with my husband. I want to go play at the park or be at the beach or, I don't know, read a book or do any of the things that you're saying you could do on a nice sunny day in LA. And those folks you will never see them on a Saturday or Sunday unless like we've got a really awesome talk that they just couldn't miss. They might pop in for that one. And so actually what you end up getting is, different audiences that SCaLE that come at different times and interact with each other at different times. But and there's not better or worse. There's not like one is more passionate about computers than the other. There's just how you manage your schedule in your life. And so over the years, SCaLE grew from being the weekend piece to also having, weekday components. It also just happens that there's only so many hours in a day. And as other communities came to us and said, hey, can we have a MySQL event or a NixCon event or an Ubuntu event or any of these other things that they wanted to do at SCaLE? The venue only has so many rooms at it. So we're like, okay, well, sure. We'll also book for Friday. We'll also book for Thursday. And so it's, the balance has shifted some days versus others. I think us generally being in the late winter, early spring has also been a nice boon for us because LA tends to have really nice weather, even in the depths of winter. And so you get a lot of folks on, from around the world that live in snowy environments. Like I live in New York now. I grew up in LA when we were planning for SCaLE. I was in college in LA. I live in New York now on the East Coast. It's, I don't know, what, 30, 35, 40 degrees outside right now, Fahrenheit. So just above freezing. I'm very excited about being in LA on a nice day in early March when I can I can wear shorts and a t-shirt maybe instead of a sweater. So so there's a lot of reasons to come. But I think it's just a good way to meet a lot of folks that are really into open source and building real business solutions on top of it.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I love those day zero or even day minus one events on like a Thursday and Fridays. I mean, MySQL happens to happen on Friday, but I know Postgres, for example, they run for like 2 days, right? If I remember correctly, like Thursday and Friday. So
the Postgres community is, I mean, we talked about MySQL mostly because we have Daniel here, and he's you mentioned he's in the MySQL community, but the Postgres folks have a huge showing at SCaLE as well. If you're into Kubernetes and all the cloud native stuff out of the CNCF, they're running KCD. They run the Kubernetes Community Day, which is their sort of it's sort of the more regional version of KubeCon Cloud Native Con that runs all over the world. That's KubeCon Cloud Native Con is their big conference that happens twice a year. KCDLA or some of the other cities is the regional event that the local organizers put on. That's another group that's joining us at SCaLE. So they've got they're running all kinds of events about workshops and service meshes and about service meshes and Kubernetes and containers and other cloud native topics that are sort of really hot in our industry right now. And so it's great opportunity to come here from local practitioners about what they're doing with those technologies.
Right. I mean, you sort of mentioned this, like you over the 20 plus years, like, I mean, early days you were focused on, I'm being simplistic here. How do I make this device driver work on my like Linux on my like desktop?
Yeah, I was exaggerating slightly just because I remember Linux being a really, I remember it being really painful when I first got started, just because installers weren't, it was amazing at the time, to be clear. But I also would come home from school every day, recompile my kernel, and suddenly my speakers or some other part of my laptop, my laptop or my desktop or whatever it was at the time, would start to work. I'd be like, wow, I have a working microphone now. This is amazing. That doesn't happen these days. These days you're not fighting as much with it. But I mean, if you think about back in 2002 when we first got started, we had like Rasmus Lerdoff was, the creator of PHP, talking about that in the very early days of PHP. We had Robert Love, who at the time was doing the first preemptive kernel work, from another kernel performance work, interactivity work to get that up and running. We had Zach Grant from the MySQL community talking about a lot of the work that MySQL is doing. I mean, we had probably, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 speakers maximum. It was almost like a full day user group meeting more than it was a conference. But it tended to be deeper topics. X kernel, some server, maybe some server performance tuning stuff. But these days it's all over the place. It's regardless of where you live in the stack, you can find something fun at SCaLE.
I mean, I think your barrier to entry is relatively pretty forgiving for a lot of people, as long as you're an open source community, like all that kind of welcome kind of thing. But do you over the years, the other co-located event that I remember is like a DevOps Day LA, right? So, over the last 10 years, like a DevOps, other like a cloud native and all that sort of evolved. Like, do you with other volunteers sort of sit down and say, hey, this is the criteria we want to use for, inviting this community to have an event with us, or is it like pretty wide open? Like, do you evaluate like proposals that come in?
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's sort of two sets of things that we look at when we're looking at content for SCaLE. One is, we have, what we call the core event, although I would say it's starting to blend a lot between, what's Linux, what's DevOps. Well, I don't know, you talk to, DevOps folks want to start talking about CI/CD. Well, it turns out there's a bunch of CI/CD talks at SCaLE already. What's the difference? That's a debate we have sometimes, like what track does this really belong in? But there's the core part of SCaLE that we, which is, we have an organizing committee, which different people, we have experts in each of the areas lead a track with a group of folks, and they look for they look to recruit speakers that they'd love to see at the event for a topic that's very timely, as well as they look at hundreds and hundreds of proposals for to speak at the event. And there's usually something like a 10-to-1 ratio between the number of slots we have and the number of proposals we get. So it's if you don't get accepted, it's not a question of you, it's a question of how many hours there are in the day and rooms that we have to do it in. So we look at it from that way, and we try to build a compelling program, something that we would want to attend ourselves and something that would be welcoming to others to help grow the community. In terms of the third, the other events that run alongside us, like you were calling them the day 0 or day -1 events, occasionally we'll reach out to somebody and say, hey, it would be really fun to have your community with us. More often than not, it's somebody that's been coming to SCaLE for years and says, I'm actually part of this other community over here. I think it'd be fun to bring our two worlds together. Can we be here? And then what we look for is it overlapping with something we already do? Like, do we already have a bunch of content in that area? If so, maybe it doesn't make sense to run as a separate event. Is it bringing new people to the conference that could grow our community? And I don't mean that in terms of the number of tickets sold. Like, again, none of us is in this for the money. Nobody at SCaLE draws a paycheck. We're all volunteers. I mean, in terms of just bringing new faces and growing the community that is SCaLE, so that we can get that cross-pollination and exchange of ideas and learn from new people. And if so, then that's also a great one. And then, the question is, do we think more than 5 people will show up to it? Because the room and AV and all those other things are really expensive. And so we want to make sure that if we're putting that money and that time, honestly, more the time than the money into things, are we going to see a fruitful result of it? And so that's talking about how are they going to promote it to their world? Do they have the right group of volunteers to review the content and recruit the content and things like that? And that's kind of where it's at. But we're not, I don't mean to make it sound super onerous to do this and work with us. It's mostly just are you in it to actually do it with us, or are you just going to show up the day of and say, oh yeah, we're having an event today, is everybody here? And you look around, you're like, wait, nope, didn't put up a schedule, didn't put up a list of speakers, forgot to invite my friends. I guess
Yeah.
it's just me and a very expensive pot of coffee.
Right.
Um, but I don't know. I guess that's maybe not people that aren't in the event industry might not get that joke about the coffee. Coffee is like
Yeah.
the most expensive thing you can buy at any sort of formal event center.
Right.
You might go to Starbucks and think, oh, that $5 frappuccino or whatever, cappuccino was really expensive. Try spending $100 a gallon on coffee at a convention center or a hotel and just
Yeah.
saying and wondering if it has
Yeah.
any caffeine in it. So
Right.
that's I think that's where the event industry makes all their money. It's not renting you rooms, it's not giving you power, it's selling you
Yeah.
black gold.
Yeah.
Um,
I like to call them coffee flavored warm water, but
yeah.
so,
Yeah, no, I think
yeah.
like I said,
Yeah.
it's black gold. Like it's
Yeah.
I think the spot price on coffee is probably higher than the
Right.
spot price on gold at any point. So
And
Yeah.
hopefully hot.
yeah,
Yeah. Hopefully
yeah.
hot. It's usually
Uh,
lukewarm, but
but no, we try to do a better job with the food and the
yeah.
drink and other things at SCaLE, but it's
Yeah.
it's there's a lot I've learned over the years, I think, about business, about nonprofits, about a lot of areas that I didn't go to school for, didn't intend to do as a career because of involvement in SCaLE. And one of them has just been how to plan events, how to work with event centers, how to work with how to work with power and AV and networking and food and beverage orders and all other stuff, which is um, honestly a really good. Um, I think when people are getting started, they often overlook how important how much volunteer opportunities can help drive your. It's not just a fun thing to do. It's not just a hobby, but it's a good way to expand your career, expand your horizons, build your network.
Mm.
And I think if instead of starting SCaLE, I just kept my head down at university, did all my projects, got my grades, graduated, etc. Probably would have been a great engineer, probably a better engineer than I am than I ever became career wise. But I think there's a lot of other aspects of my skill set that I never would have gotten, and I definitely wouldn't have the same network that I have as a result of working on SCaLE and Texas Linux Fest and other events I've been involved in.
Cool.
And I probably wouldn't have ended up in where I was, at any of the roles I had later on. And so
Yeah.
I encourage folks to get, whether it's at SCaLE or at any other sort of volunteer opportunity in the open source world or in the or outside of the open source world, like use those opportunities to obviously benefit the community, benefit the world, make it a better place, but also use it as a way to grow as a to grow in your own skills and to grow your network, because those are both things that it's harder to do on your own.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, really appreciate your time. Like one final question on SCaLE, I guess. For
Yeah.
people that are attending the event for the first time, like what advice do you have, or because it's like if you go to a new event for the first time, it's like joining a new open source community. You're kind of, even though you've been to conferences before, like the culture is different, like the vibe is a little different.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for people that are attending for the first time, or thinking about attending SCaLE? But
So I'd say so one I should probably give you the dates and the website,
yeah,
which is March
yeah,
14th through the 17th,
yeah,
2024 at the Pasadena Convention Center. Website SoCalLinuxExpo.org. If you use the promo code PING, your listeners can get 50% off registration.
awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely
So
include it in the episode
yeah.
description. So
Yeah, and in terms of attending the show, I would say don't be shy. If you see a group of people talking about something you're interested in, saddle on up and join the conversation. They're there to meet you. Don't feel like you're interrupting or intruding. They want you in that conversation. If you've joined the conversation and you realize you don't want to be there anymore, you don't even have to interrupt. Don't even have to say
right,
goodbye. Just walk away.
yeah,
The law 2 feet. Go to find the conversation that is
yeah,
interesting to you. Don't only look at what's on the schedule in terms of what to do, because the schedule is going to list formal things, when talks are, when workshops are, when Expo floor is open. Make sure to save time throughout that for also just those casual conversations that I mentioned. I think
right,
a lot of times you're going to be trying to run between two sessions because you're really excited about hearing what the next, I don't know, the next Kubernetes thing that you wanted to hear about,
mm,
and you're going to stumble into somebody in the hall talking about something interesting, it's okay to stop and miss that talk. We record them all. They'll be on YouTube
Yeah.
later. It's not as fun as being in the room for it the first time, but that conversation, that's not going to be on YouTube.
Right.
And so come check that out. And then if you're coming from out of town, or even if you're local, you might want to stay near the venue. Waking up really early on Saturdays and Sundays is not fun. There's also lots of activities happening in the evenings. There's super cheap hotel rooms in the area. Stay the night. Come and hang out. Turn it into open source. I don't know, spring break or something, and
Yeah.
stay around there. Those are sort of three tips I'd put out there.
Cool.
And I guess the last one is also speakers. That just as I said, don't feel shy about walking up to attendees and chatting with them and learning from them. The speakers that are on stage, I know they seem sometimes, it's like, oh, how could I possibly approach them? It's my open source hero. They're there to be approached. They want to hear from you. They came to teach you about what they're doing. Come learn, come share what you're doing. No matter how boring you think what you're working is, it's super interesting to somebody else that hasn't done it yet and wants to. And so, that cross pollination is important. So,
yeah. I mean, as a previous speaker, I definitely second that. Like, there's nothing worse than not getting any questions or feedback at the end of your talk. Like, I love it when people come up to me and stop me in the hallway. So yeah, I definitely second that. So, and yeah, and then Pasadena Convention Center, it's a beautiful venue in a nice neighborhood, nice, walkable neighborhood, which isn't very common in Southern California or California in general. So, yeah, I love walking. There, like you said, there are a few hotels nearby and very walkable. It's a very pleasant walk in the morning, especially. So,
for sure. Awesome. Well, it was great to be on the show, Ray and Daniel, and thank you very much for sponsoring SCaLE and for being part of our community. And
sure.
We hope to welcome your listeners in Pasadena.
Yeah, looking forward to being back. I unfortunately missed it last year, so looking forward to being back in Pasadena after the pandemic. I'm not gonna let you go until I ask our last trivia question that we ask all of our guests. I mean, you mentioned that you live in New York City. Which is whether you've been to New York City or not, I mean, everybody, has an impression of New York City and heard about him. As a local, I mean, can you share something about New York City that you think most people may not appreciate or know about? Like, it could be your favorite, like, bagel shop that people may not know about. I'm being very stereotypical talking about bagels in New York, but
I think people talk about bagels and pizza a lot.
right.
I don't know that I have a favorite bagel shop. There's a couple within walking distance of me. They're all great. It's whichever one has the shortest line on the Saturday or Sunday morning when I need bagel. Pizza, I would say I'm a big fan of Roberta's in Brooklyn, although it's a bit of a trek for me. I'm in Manhattan. Let's see. Bars, I would check out. Patent Pending is one of my favorites. They're a sort of a Tesla themed bar in the radio wave building where Tesla used to work. I don't mean Tesla the cars, I mean Tesla the scientist. And so their menu's really cool with lots of like diagrams if it was like Tesla's invention notebook or something like that. The cocktails are really quite tasty regardless of which end of the which end of the spectrum you like, them boozy or sugary or somewhere in the middle. Those are sort of, I'll give you those are three things. I gave you two things. So
Patent Pending, I'll have to check it out. So cool. Well, appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you again in March. And and then thanks folks for listening. And I'll add all that information about SCaLE in the episode description. So hopefully we'll see some of the listeners at the event as well. So, all right, thanks a lot.